You can test out Linux with just a spare USB drive. In this video, we're going to install Linux Mint to a thumb drive and then reboot into Linux without disrupting or wiping out our installation of Windows. From there, we can test out how Mint works and what we would like to make Linux our daily driver. This USB drive will then be useful for the actual installation of Linux on our machine in the next video. This video is part of a series dedicated to developing C# applications on Linux. Along the way, we'll gain a better knowledge of how Linux works and how to make our apps truly cross-platform. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel to stay informed of new episodes as they come out. And if you're looking for even more .NET, SQL, or even AI training, go to imtimcorey.com. So let's jump over to my spare Windows machine. This is an old recording machine I had that I'm no longer using for recording, and I'm going to put Mint on it eventually. But for now, I have Windows on it, and there's not much here. But what we're going to do is we're going to convert this over into a machine that works with Linux. So for right now, we're going to just install Linux Mint, and just to a thumb drive. We're not going to overwrite Windows yet. We're just going to put it to a thumb drive. Let's go ahead and close this out. And right here on linuxmint.com, we can see download or installation instructions. This is super helpful. If you notice down here, it tells you more about Linux Mint, including the fact that most things are just out of the box work. That's one of the nice things about Mint and how it works. They talk about the fact that home rule, like your computer, your rules, we're not taking your data. It's going to be rock solid, free and open source, community centric, out of the box, just works, and keep it simple. So really cool stuff, and their documentation is pretty good. So we're going to hit download here and say, yes, we're ready to download. But here's our first question. That is, what version of Linux Mint do you want? And the answer for us is going to be the Cinnamon Edition. This is the most popular version of Linux Mint. So therefore, that's what we're going to use. We'll hit download, and it says, okay, where do you want to download it from? And there's a whole bunch of different options that you can download from, different mirrors of this. So we're going to download it from, let's just choose the first US version, Clarkson University, and it's going to start downloading. Now, I won't make you watch the whole download, but the important bit is that that's not it, because this downloads an ISO file. If you're not familiar with ISO files, what they are is they are a whole operating system, but they are in one file, and you have to, and that's the installation media. It's like we used to get CDs. Well, an ISO would be a CD or a DVD or a Blu-ray, I guess. But this right here isn't going to be enough for us. We need to do something with this. So what we're going to do is go back to the home while it's downloading. We'll go to installation instructions. How do we use this ISO file? So this installation instructions right here, really great. It shows you, okay, here's how to download the right edition. Here's how to verify your ISO edition. And then here's how to create bootable media. That's what you want, is to create bootable media. This was going to put on a thumb drive. If you're not familiar with thumb drives are those little USB sticks that you plug in. And I've got one right here. It's actually a 64 gigabyte stick, 57 usable. But it's just what I had laying around. I've got a bunch of thumb drives laying around. So we're going to install on this one. And as you can see, it's empty. There's nothing on here, empty files. That's important too, because this creating a bootable media off of this will mean it wipes out all the data. So just make sure you don't have anything you want to save on that thumb drive before you turn it into bootable media. Let's click this link to create bootable media. Now, if you're on Linux, here's how you do that. So you just go to menu accessories, USB image writer, and say, hey, there's the image, write it to this USB drive. But we're not on Linux. We're going to Linux. Right now, we're on Windows. So in that case, we download Etcher. So we're going to download Etcher and run this. This will take our image, it will put it onto the thumb drive of our choice, and create that bootable media, which we then reboot onto. So we hit Etcher and say download Etcher. And here are our options. again, this is where you have to know what you're on. So for Windows, we have both for x86 and 64-bit architectures. You can download that here. For Mac OS, x64 or ARM64 if you have an ARM chip. And then for Linux, if you're on a 64-bit Linux, yes, we will be when we get there. But if you're on a legacy version, that's the download for that. Also note, this is one of the things that's going to be confusing at first with Linux is there are Debian packages or Red Hat Linux packages, so Red Hat packages. So it's a .deb or a .rpm. And that's probably one of the first questions you're going to have when it comes to installing things on Linux is, well, do I do a .deb or a .rpm? Because we're not either. We're Mint, right? Well, Mint is based upon Ubuntu, which is based upon Debian. Therefore, we're going to use a .deb package. So just note that's the package type we'll use. We're not going to use RPM packages. Don't try to use those. It's the wrong architecture. Yes, Linux is a diverse culture of operating systems, not just one specific OS. So there's a lot of different flavors of that. Therefore, you have to know that, yes, you want the DEB packages. That's kind of a side note. We'll get back to that later when we talk about things like VS Code and Edge and other things we want to install. But for now, we're on Windows. So we're going to download this setup, and this will allow us to install the ISO onto our drive. So I'm going to hit open on this. Now it's downloaded. We still have 26 minutes to go on our ISO download. So we'll be waiting on that. But this is Etcher. Pretty simple stuff. It found the USB drive. Notice we can hit change here and make sure we have the right drive. Make sure, notice there's one drive and it's hidden and it says system drive. It says do not use this one. Make sure you do not use your system drive. Now, as you saw by default, let's do that again. By default, it hides the system drive. Super helpful. But I would encourage you, yes, look at it, it says Philips USB flash drive. So that's helpful. But I don't think I can expand this window. But also notice the location is D. I would encourage you to go to File Explorer and just verify that, yes, it's the D drive we're going to overwrite. That's just a double check to make sure that that's the thumb drive we're overwriting. I have not seen it yet try to overwrite a installed hard drive. However, with the fact that installed hard drives and thumb drives are so close anymore to each other, I'm not going to trust it to always be correct. So I encourage you to double check this. This is one of those things where you get it wrong and you've wiped out data. So make sure you double check this. Make sure it is the thumb drive that you're overwriting. Okay, so yes, we want the thumb drive. We need to now select our ISO. We'll wait for this to download. I'll pause the video and we'll come back to it. Okay, the download just finished. So we're going to flash from file and we will choose that file, which is in my downloads. There we go. So now we're ready. We have the ISO, we have the thumb drive correctly selected, and we'll hit flash. And we have to hit the yes on the UAC prompt. And now this is going to flash our thumb drive. This might take a little bit. It's going to take 3 gigabytes of space. That is something we didn't talk about yet. My thumb drive is huge. It's got 64 gigabytes. And quite frankly, thumb drives are cheap anymore. So you don't need a big thumb drive. And you don't need to spend a lot of money. You can spend just a few dollars and get an 8 gigabyte one. It should be fine. So don't worry about having a huge thumb drive. You just need a few gigabytes on it in order to handle this ISO. Again, this is going to be a 3 gigabyte ISO, so it's going to take a little bit and it's going to take a bit of space, but we don't need to worry about having that massive drive. Okay, I'm going to pause the video again, and this time we'll wait for this installation to complete, and once it does, then we'll come back and start using this to boot into Linux. Okay, now we have the USB stick installed. Notice I did not install the update and manage devices with the Balena Cloud. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use Etcher to flash the device. We're done. So with that, we can now close this out. We can close out this website. and go over to our list of devices. We don't even see the thumb drive right now. It's not showing up. That's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to restart onto that thumb drive. Now, the way to do this can be as simple as just reboot. It depends on if your BIOS is set up to do that. Now, mine is, but in case yours isn't, there are other options. So if you hit the Start key in Windows and type Startup, notice this right here is Change Advanced Startup Options. Select that. And then in here, we can say Restart Now, which restarts your device to change startup settings, including starting from a disk or USB drive. That will help. Now, every PC is different, which is why it's frustrating to try to boot to a specific drive if your BIOS isn't set up that way. I would encourage you to go in your BIOS and check it out and see what the boot options are, but there are different keys to get into the BIOS depending on your manufacturer. It could be F2, it could be F10 or F12, F11, or delete. So usually what happens is you boot, you start up, and you mash one of the keys, and if it doesn't work, you start over. And I would encourage you, don't hit the restart because in Windows, hit the shutdown and then start up again and mash a different key. You can look up online which key your particular computer might be using, but it does depend on the motherboard, not just on even the manufacturer because sometimes manufacturers use more than one motherboard. So just note that's the case. But you can hit restart now, or for me, I can just hit, I'll restart now. So let's go restart now, which is going to restart Windows. Remember, we're not installing Linux right now. We're just booting off this thumb drive. So we don't have to worry about formatting our drive or losing our files. Now, I encourage you still do a backup, because if you don't have a backup, well, then you might have a problem if you do wipe out your files. So that's a problem you want to avoid. Make sure you have a backup anytime you're working on a device at all. Okay, so now we can exit and continue with Windows 11, or we can use a device. So I'm going to use a device, and this is my removable device. I'm going to select this. It's going to try and boot off that removable drive. As long as it sees it, it will boot off of it. Obviously, it says right now no signal. It's trying to restart on that device. So, and notice it says delete or F2 to enter the BIOS. That's my particular machine, so that's what I would do, is mash one of those keys to get into the BIOS and set up a different boot order if I needed to. But really need to do is boot off of this USB drive, and then it will start up. And of course, it doesn't do it. Let me go ahead and make sure it's plugged in correctly. Sometimes it has a problem with it being plugged in. I'll be right back, and we'll try this again. Okay, I booted into my BIOS, and this won't be relevant to everybody because of the fact that everybody has a different BIOS and it looks a bit different. But in here, I'm in the easy mode of my BIOS, and easy mode I don't love because of the fact that it hides so many things, but the benefit is that it does usually expose just the things that you probably want. And in this case, right here, you can see boot priority. It does have my Windows Boot Manager first instead of my USB drive. I'm going to switch that. But I encourage you to check out advanced mode. Be very careful in your BIOS. Don't just go messing with things to mess with things, because you can make some changes and have some things not work because of it. So don't just go in there and tweak or use the AI tweaker. But under the boot option, you'll probably have, notice because I just changed it now, boot option 1 is my USB drive, boot option 2 is the Windows Boot Manager. So with that, I hit exit, save changes, and reset. So it's going to say, yeah, it says I have no changes, but I do have changes. So let's just make sure that, yes, that's correct. I will say, okay, it must have just saved it because I was in the easy boot mode. But let's try this again. It's going to boot up into onto our thumb drive. But again, don't forget that Windows is still there. It's just on a different device that we're booting to second. So with that, hey, we now have we've booted to the correct drive. So Windows is still there. We haven't lost anything. But now we're going to start the Linux Mint 22.3 Cinnamon 64-bit. We're not going to do compatibility mode or OEM install. We're going to start with the top option, and just hit enter. This will boot us into Linux off of the thumb drive. Now, what this means for us is the fact that when we boot onto this, any changes we make are non-permanent. They're going to last only until we shut down Linux. So at that point, they get refreshed or reset, and we don't have those changes anymore, which is not a way you want to run your operating system. You don't want it to be a permanent thing because of the fact that, yeah, you want to make changes, you want to install things, you want to configure or tweak things. But what it does allow us to do is see how things work, try things out, and even install things and see how that installation goes, knowing that when we restart, that's going to go away and we can reset and start back over from the beginning. Now, this will also be a slower process because we are running off of that USB stick instead of off of the hard drive. Hard drives run faster than USB sticks. Now they're getting closer, but your built-in SSD or NVMe drive will run faster than a external USB drive in almost every case. So that means that don't look at the performance issues or the way it performs on your USB drive and think, oh, it must be slow. So with this, we will boot up into Linux, which is taking a bit, but then we're going to try out just some basics to see how it works. And then from there, we will install Linux in our next video to our hard drive. And that's where we overwrite everything. And we need to make sure before we do that, you have everything backed up. So I guess my assignment for you for next time is to make sure you have your stuff backed up on whatever device you're going to install Linux onto if you're going to follow along and install. Okay, I'm going to pause the video here and wait for this to continue booting. And we're in. So this is Linux, and it looks kind of familiar. I mean, it's very small, but down here we have our taskbar. And the very first thing I want to do is address the display settings, which if you scroll down here, we can see display, or I could have typed display, but I'm going to change this to 200% scale like I do on Windows. And again, this looks very familiar, but this now is the 200% since I'm on a 4K monitor. 4K is just too tiny if we just have 100%. So I change it 200% for all my displays when I'm recording. Even though it still is a 4K, it's 4K that looks like 1080p. Okay, so if I hit my Start key on my keyboard, my Windows key, then it pops up the Start menu. If I type, maybe I want a display, I can type display, and there we go. It brings up the option. I can hit enter, it opens. This is a very familiar layout for a person who comes from Windows. Now, yes, the pointer is a little different. The icons are a little different. I'm in military time here or 24-hour time instead of 12-hour time. There's some things that are different, but by and large, this is Windows-like in how it works. So I encourage you to work with this thumb drive, try it out. Like I said, if you reboot, all these settings go back to default. So you can try things out. You can check out the Office product. They have Office products like LibreOffice Calc, which if you have not used, well, if you've used Excel, it's pretty much Excel. This looks a lot like Excel. It works a lot like Excel. So you can pretty much use this like you would Excel, and yet it's free. So it's a great option for you. There's a lot of things packed in by default. If you look through this menu, you can see this is kind of an old school menu, right? With the things in a list like we used to have with Windows 7, 8, maybe even 10. You can, if you're a gamer, you can install Steam on here and play the games. If you want to use the Office products, well, there's just Office versions or the LibreOffice versions, just about everything. And that's what's all out of the box. For our browser, we do have the Firefox browser. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Firefox. Yes, I like having it as an option, but But at the same time, I do think that personally, I prefer a different browser. I prefer Microsoft Edge. And yes, I know some people don't like Edge because it comes from Microsoft. It has Copilot built in. We're going to have a whole episode on installing Edge, why I choose Edge, as well as how to turn off most of the annoying things. And that'll be a side quest video for us. But try this all out. Now, the one thing I would encourage you not to do yet is this icon right here, install Linux Mint. You might say, well, I'm already using Linux Mint. Yes, from the thumb drive. But what this will do is it will install it on your hard drive, overwriting your Windows installation. That's that point of no return thing, where you wipe out all your old files. All your old files from that hard drive are gone. So make sure you do a backup first. So I encourage you, don't run that yet. We'll do that on video, probably the next video, I think. But for now, try it out, play around, browse the internet, look at the file system. Yeah, it looks pretty similar, right? Desktop documents, all the rest. If you go to the volume itself, that's our Windows volume. So those are Windows files. We don't have an installation yet on Linux. This is the from the thumb drive installation. So with this, I would encourage you to try things out. Yes, it'll be a little bit different. Yes, it'll be a little quirky, but we can unmount that. That was the Windows volume. But try it out. We already have printers installed. I have printers on my network, so it already found printers. There's a printer in my office, my wife's printer, and I think that's my. I have a printer for little labels. So it already found those and installed them. I mean, this is really user friendly, and it's something that's, even if you were giving this to your mother, your grandparents, where they just want to browse the web, this might be a good option for you. So check it out first, learn how it works. A lot of it is secure by default, all is secure by default. So you really can't mess up most things too badly. But even with this thumb drive, you can check things out without fear of really messing anything up, because you're just experimenting, and it'll get wiped out when you reboot. So with that, that's how we get started with testing Linux. Next up, we'll install Linux and get those first steps going of getting ready for working with .NET on Linux. Until then, thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.